Hey, so hello. I'm Tom McNamee. I'm the editorial page editor of the Chicago Sun-Times, and thank you to all three candidates being here today. I suppose I should ask you each to give a very brief sort of statement about why you're in this race. And what you would hope to accomplish. Senator, for you in your case, would be what you hope to accomplish beyond what you've done already. So why don't we start with you, Senator Durbin, and if you want to just give a quick introduction.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks to all those who've gathered together and Mr. Curran and Dr. Wilson for being with us this morning. The reason I'm in this race is because I'm counting on change. I believe the American people are going to elect a new president, and January of 2021 is going to be one of the exciting moments in the history of this nation. We have a job to do. We have to repair the damage that's been done by Donald Trump and his administration. That starts with the coronavirus, and it certainly goes to issues of spurring this economy, renewing our reputation around the world, and making certain that every American has a fighting chance. The second thing that we're going to have to do is work to reunite this country. I think Joe Biden's the person to do that. I believe I'm the only candidate this morning who will publicly say, I'm voting for Joe Biden. I'm not voting for Donald Trump. I think Joe Biden is the person to start reuniting this country. And then I want to make sure that Illinois has a seat at the table when the important decisions are made in Washington. Seniority in the Senate counts for something. I can point to literally scores of projects that I've been able to bring back to our state to create good paying jobs and to give a future to our economy. We need that now more than ever as we come out of this pandemic. We've got to be ready to restore this economy and make it even stronger and put Illinois into the fight. That's why I'm running for reelection.
Dr. Wilson, would you like to do the same?
Yeah. First, thank you for allowing us to be part of this morning. I'm running because you need change. Dick Durbin been at 37 years now. I don't know what else he can change. You know, it's time for him to go. You need new ideas. You need to be able to keep jobs and corporate in the state of Illinois. You need to lower these taxes. You need to make sure that this is violent. You'll go away. You need to be able to communicate with its citizen in the state of Illinois. You need to do all that. The Democratic Party, if they were so good to particular people of color, why are the country in the shape it is now? And if they were so good to the people of all nationalities, why we lost so many jobs? People move out of the state. Why don't we have economic growth? Small businesses do business with the federal government as well as international. But people don't left out by growth. Why we got all this situation with this COVID-19 and nobody's doing nothing about it, but they tell people they can't come out, but they don't give them no resources like money to be able to make a living. This is nuts. So 37 years of the same politics right now, it's just plain on wrong. So running to make sure we can bring some change, add some fresh new ideas, and bring things to the table and make this a better state.
And Mark Curran, thanks for being here. And would you like to say a couple of words?
Sure. I just want to make sure that everybody knows who I am. Mark Curran. I was a candidate that emerged from a five-way Republican primary with about a 20% over any other candidate. By way of background, I'm a former county, state, and federal prosecutor. I was the longest serving sheriff in Lake County history. I've been a constitutional law professor. I was an interim coroner. I spent time in business. I've spent time in the private practice of law. I took an office that had a lot of problems, transformed it. I was under budget 12 years in a row. Senator Durbin's been in the U.S. Senate 24 years, in Congress 38 years. We have approximately $26 trillion national debt. You can only look to the people that have been there. That's the legacy. That's what they're going to leave to our children and grandchildren. It's completely unfair. It concerns me as a father of three boys that's what we're looking at. We're looking at times in America that, frankly, nobody could have ever envisioned in terms of the riots in all the big cities in America, police being told to stand down, businesses going up in flames, Molotov cocktails being thrown at somebody's business. It was their life savings. Windows kicked in, violence all over the place. My background puts me in a unique position to be able to address those issues. America has been killed economically as well. With Senator Durbin having been in Congress 38 years, he's watched all these good paying jobs get shipped overseas and watched the American middle class get destroyed. We're at a time in America where 1% of America has more wealth than the bottom 90% of America. It's not right. I'm middle class. I'll fight for those middle class people. And I think that we really, truly are at a crossroads in American history. We need somebody new, as Dr. Wilson said, absolutely. And I believe that I am the right candidate, somebody that has that record of fighting on behalf of the people, fighting on behalf of the forgotten. Thank you.
So let me just start with what I think is sort of an overarching theme when it comes to U.S. Senate elections across the country right now. An awful lot of people, and not just Democrats, a lot of Republicans are saying that the utter failure of the U.S. Senate to ever call out Donald Trump, to ever hold him to account, to ever demand that he have a higher standard of decency and of factuality, that the U.S. Senate has failed, the Republican Senate has failed, and that therefore the Republican Party has failed, and it makes no sense at all to keep doing the same thing over and over again when it's not working, which is to have a Republican-controlled Senate that hasn't had the backbone to call out a president who has been so egregiously offensive at times. And Mark, I'll put that to you first. What's your view on President Trump? And if we were to endorse you, or if you were to get to the Senate and if President Trump were to get reelected, what would be your relationship with Trump?
Well, essentially what I would say is that in terms of priorities, I would put, my faith at the top, that ultimately I'm an answer to God, and then, family, although that has less role in being a U.S. Senator, but the Illinois citizens would take priority over Donald Trump. As you all know, I was a former Democrat. I switched parties. My politics are very complex. I'm not easily pigeonholed. Throughout the primary process, I was called an anti-Trumper. I'm not an anti-Trumper, but I have criticized him in the past. And ultimately, I think he has a good record to run on. I don't use the tone or the dialect that he does. I think I'm a lot more respectful to, the media, knowing that y'all buy ink by the barrel. That's not a good fight. And even beyond that, we have an objective to try to sell ourselves. And I'm a Dale Carnegie disciple that, you catch more flies with honey and than vinegar. So I'm not, I wouldn't have a problem calling him out, but I think he has had a good record, and I think he has done a lot of great things. And I think that I'm running against Dick Durbin, a career politician who's been there way too long, who has been a far left partisan. And I could go on forever to make my case on that he does not represent the vast majority of Illinoisans. He only represents the far left wing of the party. Okay. But that's not me. Thank you.
Does he have a good record? Is it just a question of his demeanor?
Well, I think it works both ways. I think you have to put the citizen of the state of Illinois first. I think the party, the Democratic Party, with Dick Durbin, he can't do nothing unless he gets the party approval. So I put people over politics as related to Donald Trump. I work with any president. I think things getting too personal in Washington, and they're leaving out the citizen of the state of Illinois. That's what some of the problems are. Now, I would say this here about, I did support Donald Trump. I'll say that. I support the situation of right as related to freedom of religion. I support that. I support that he raised the crime bill that when Senator Durbin been in office 37, 38 years, passed it, supported the crime bill. Donald Trump came back after that and got rid of the crime bill. But it locked up thousands of people broke up a lot of families, you know. But I'm not running against, I'm like Mark here, I'm not running against Donald Trump. I'm running against Dick Durbin, who need to be out of office. And let me say this also. And the other thing is that too, you got too many lobbyists in Washington, and Dick Durbin has a lobbying company with him and his family. That is dead wrong. You know, he went in office out of college, from my record. Now he's a millionaire, but it's a conflict of interest to have lobbyists and run in U.S. Senate at the same time. I use my own particular money that I'm not accountable to anybody. So I will continue to do this. My own party is in existence now after this election here, and it will form that type of party. And so people can be independent. I won't take a penny from nobody. I use my own money to serve the citizens of the state of Illinois. It's not about Donald Trump. This is about the person being there 37 years and will not get back in another year within a few months.
Just to clarify, my question is not, is this a referendum on Donald Trump? The question is this a referendum on the U.S. Senate controlled by Republicans who have failed to hold Donald Trump accountable for his worst offenses? Senator Durbin, would you like to respond to that?
Well, of course I would. And I serve in that Senate, and there are 53 Republicans, and I could count on one hand, maybe on two fingers, the number of Republican senators who spoke up when Donald Trump said that John McCain was not a hero. For goodness sakes, if a man who spends over 5 years in a prisoner of war camp is not an American military hero, who is? And you take a look at the comments that he's made, even the comments Mr. Curran made about John Lewis. I mean, some of these things are outrageous. And they become just ordinary commerce in the tweets and conversations in Washington. Yes, I disagree with Donald Trump on many things. And let me make it clear, number one, I disagree on what he's done with our coronavirus pandemic. By every objective standard, we have failed to address this pandemic effectively. By every objective standard. May I be specific? We have 4.5% of the world's population in the United States. We currently have more than 20% of the COVID-19 deaths in the world. 4.5% of the population, 20% of the deaths. If you were living in Germany, you would be 1/5 as likely to get infected as people in the United States are today. Oh, you say, well, that's Europe. That's another story. Let's look at Canada. Canada has 1/2 the infection rate of the United States. How did we reach this point? The lack of leadership by Donald Trump and his administration. No, he didn't create this pandemic, but he had to respond to it as leaders across the world did. And look at the terrible, terrible results. Almost 200,000 Americans have died as of today, and we expect many more to follow. And what has this president done? This president has basically ignored the seriousness of the matter. The Woodward book tells the story. He deliberately misled the American people about the seriousness of this disease, called it a hoax, said it'd go away as soon as the sun came out. You know, we turned out to be absolutely false. And then he ignored the advice of public health experts, Dr. Fauci and the rest of them. It came up with these wild theories about disinfectants and hydroxychloroquine and all of these different things that made no sense whatsoever. He refuses to wear a mask, for goodness sakes, when we know that's the simplest and most effective thing we can do to finally bring this under control. And how many Republicans, including the two that are here today, have called him out? No, Dr. Wilson says, oh, he's done a good job. Tell that to the families of 200,000 pandemic victims. That did not have to happen in the United States, and it did. And in terms of the crime bill, Dr. Wilson, that bill that President Trump signed was my bill. It was a bipartisan bill that Senator Grassley and I introduced. And the president, yes, in fact, he did sign it. It's called the First Step Act. So if you wonder if I can work with him on the right issues, I found a couple, only a couple, but I've been able to do it.
So, Dr. Wilson, since the senator singled you out, you want to respond to that? And specifically, could you talk a little bit about the federal response to the pandemic and what you think you would have done differently and would do differently?
Well, first of all, Senator Durbin couldn't even get people face masks in the state of Illinois. You know, I donated $27 million free of charge, you know, to the citizens of Illinois. Senator Durbin couldn't even get gloves for the people in the hospital. You know, we've done all of that. Senator Durbin Durbin wouldn't even give people money. We're giving away $3 or $4 million to the citizen in Illinois. The churches just have keep the doors open, people get food to eat. Senator Durbin didn't do none of that. I'm not going to point the finger at just say the president. I'm calling like it is. He is out there too. Senator Durbin has destroyed a lot of people's lives with that crime bill, you know, and plus Senator Durbin don't even call his people back. I try to even call him before I got ready to run to just put the record straight, you know, ask my congressman to call, my lawyer to call. I called 3 or 4 times. He didn't even call back. So I look at it that, look, he can't talk about other people when look at himself for 37 years. Are you better off today on the west side? Those lots is still the same as the day, 37 years ago. You know, I'm not defending anybody, Trump or Joe Biden or anything. Running against Dick Durbin, he's a failure. You know?
Okay, Mr. Curran, can you talk about this? What do you say? What's your take on the federal response to the coronavirus up until now? And what do you think could have been done differently? And what would you do if you were in the Senate?
So, like I said, I'm not embarrassed to run with Donald Trump on his record. I think Dr. Wilson said he's not voting for Donald Trump. And Dr. Wilson, Dick Durbin tries to imply that, deflecting from what a horrible job he's done in terms of representing the Black community. You go to his hometown of East St. Louis, and it's just a disgrace that there's a city that looks like that in America. And that's on Dick Durbin. But with regards to the coronavirus, President Trump has been, in my lifetime, I think the first president to really see China for what they are. And he called them out, and he gets it. He understands what a dangerous country China is, and their end game is to destroy America. And I think he's been all over.
So let's stipulate that he called out China. What else have we done as a federal response to the pandemic that you think is good or bad? What would you do differently?
So this was a first impression. This was not something that there was a book on. And I think that President Trump has tried to balance it out. The problem is people like Senator Durbin, you know, who's been 51 years on the government trial, and he's never had to have a real job. So President Trump gets the fact that small businesses are dying. They're not going to return. They can't meet their payroll. They can't meet their mortgage, and they're going to go away. And he has to balance all that out with the virus and the danger of the virus. So I think he's done a good job in terms of trying to see that all. Does he state things the way you or I would like him to? No, you know, oftentimes not. Oftentimes it's confrontational when it doesn't need to be.
Well, what, for instance, is this repeated dismissal of the efficacy of wearing a mask. A very small example. That strikes me as a rather dangerous message from a U.S. president. What do you say to that, Mark?
So I wear a mask, just because I talk.
I know you do, but I'm asking you about the bully pulpit from the president about people wearing a mask.
So I think that there was, at one point in time, there was conflicting messages as to what the mask does and what have you, and then you have the whole. The bulk of the time, I think he's outside right now, and he is social distancing when he has the mask off. So I think the consensus is that when you're outside, it's less important to have the mask on. I would, I think that he's done a lot very well on this coronavirus. I think in your survey, you asked me to rate him, and I didn't give him an A. I gave him a B. Maybe it's a low B.
I mean, yeah. I don't mean to press this too much, Mark, and I do want to move on. But for instance, the president recently had 2 indoor rallies, 2 of them. And at both of those rallies, the vast majority of people did not wear a mask. There was nobody standing up at the podium saying, please put on a mask. And in 2 weeks, a lot of those people are going to get sick. What do you say to people who say that is not a responsible, and that's not just about style, that's about actual substance of the job when the president does that?
So I have been so conflicted on this virus, as I think a lot of Americans have. Should we have shut everything down? Should we have shut down child sports? is hurting a better approach. There was never a discussion on any of this. And I think that's where a lot of people in America feel ripped off. You know, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're a country that believes in liberty, and people have the opportunity to make those choices for themselves. I don't think people want to sacrifice that liberty. They're very, very concerned. Obviously, there's a vulnerable population that we want to be empathetic regarding, and we have to recognize that this is not our earth alone, that we have a responsibility towards each other. So it's all a balance.
Okay.
I don't know that there's a right or wrong there.
Okay. Any last thoughts on that, Dr. Wilson?
My thought is this way here. I support wearing face masks. Obviously, I gave away 27 million of them. All right. If I was in any place today where I go, whatever it may be, I recommend wearing face masks. Now, when the virus came out, everybody was talking about don't have to use face masks. You know, everybody was talking about that. So it's kind of like a conflict messaging. Don't use them. After a while now they say use them, all right? But I use them. I gave away 27 million. If I was in Washington next to the president of the United States at this particular time, Donald Trump, I would say, Mr. President, would you consider wearing a face mask? You know, it's just safe more and more in that particular way. But I wear a mask because a lot of people at a restaurant be talking over my food, and I love to see them wear a mask just because of that, because I have a background in food. So I support wearing face masks.
Okay, Senator.
Quickly, first, Dr. Wilson, thank you. Thank you for distributing those face masks and other protective equipment. I know you have a company in China that produces them, and many of the people who have received those face masks are grateful, and I want to thank you personally for doing that. I suspended fundraising in my campaign for 2 months. We donated $60,000 to many entities to buy face masks and do what they thought was necessary to protect people. We all have to pitch in, and you have. Thank you for doing that very much. But let me tell you what, the fact that I have to get on the telephone at the request of Governor Pritzker and beg Vice President Pence for ventilators for Illinois is wrong. It's wrong. Why should our state have to beg this president for the basics that we need to protect our people? We should have had a national plan. It shouldn't be the most popular, the most Republican governors that get all the favors from this administration. It should have been a national plan that didn't care whether you were black, white, or brown, woman, man, Democrat, independent, Republican. But this president played political favorites, and he came up with these weird ideas on how to deal with this coronavirus. And now he will not even show himself to be humble enough to wear a mask in public, which we're told over and over again could break the back of this coronavirus. He is just too vain when it comes to this, and that's wrong. You think that's a good record? I don't.
Okay, questions?
Let me add to this here.
No, let's, with all respect, Dr. Wilson, my question does relate to something you and Mr. Curran brought up, and it has to do with the impact, economic impact of COVID. And both of you talked about bringing back small businesses and helping them through this. But yet we've seen how tough it is to get the first stimulus package. And now I don't know which one we're on now. I'm sure Senator Durbin would know. But if either one of you were to win election and the Republicans were to maintain control of the Senate, what would you do to make sure that the federal government, which is the only entity big enough to help every state and do what needs to be done, does something to shore up small businesses instead of just stymieing legislation, meant to help people?
Well, first off, I understand business very, 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 very clearly. I'm independent. I'm a business person. We make a lot of money, but we give away 99.99% away to the community. All right. The other thing that we do is what would have done would be this here. If particularly the poorest community and the poorest people, all these dollars spent per year, okay, overseas with government here and China, all these different places, doesn't get back into the neighborhoods should get back into. I'd like to say this is that you got to put these businesses first, these small businesses first, because those are the ones that generate the dollar and lower the tax rate into the community. You cannot keep raising taxes and running business out of the state of Illinois because there go your job along with it. You know, Senator Durbin have stood around, not voted to lower taxes, but he every time tax goes up, he doesn't say anything. So people got to move out of the state, you know, job leave, you know, company leave. This is wrong. But as to your question, I'm a business person. We need to be able to cut budget, you know, by bidding out contracts and things of that nature. We need to do it fairly. We need to make sure we can bring those dollars in instead of just giving contracts and not bid. Then the dollars can flow back into the community, even during this COVID kind of a situation. You know, so I see things a lot different. You know, I think that my business experience would help guide the state of Illinois in the direction it should be going for all citizens.
Okay, what would you do to get the kind of stimulus money out of Washington that is really needed to keep businesses from shutting down?
Right. So, I mean, it's all a balance. You know, when you look at, as I mentioned before, our national debt, you know, Senator Durbin's voted to raise the debt ceiling a couple dozen times. He's voted for thousands of tax increases. He's basically never met a spending program he didn't like. So we have to be careful with that. What I would recommend is that the money would go directly to the small businesses and go directly to individuals as opposed to cities and other forms of government that would be much more reckless with it. But I think small businesses, one of the most important things is that they need to open. I mean, they'll tell you, I am in small businesses every day talking to these people, and they'll tell you that the regulations obviously kill them. They're taxed to death in Illinois, and really that's progressive tax is going to be the death of them all. So that's a horrible thing. And then finally, you know, Senator Durbin, who's a big, his biggest donors are trial lawyers, and small businesses will tell you that is makes it real. They make trial lawyers make it really hard on them to make a living. So the bottom line is, I'd want to see any stimulus needs to go directly to the businesses.
Mr. Durbin, if you want to quickly respond, and then, you know, I'll yield to somebody else.
Lorraine, thanks a lot. And so March 26th, we passed the CARES Act, 96-0, Democrats and Republicans voting for it. And the president signed it into law. And as a result of the CARES Act, we had a dramatic increase in unemployment insurance for those who were out of work. We also had an important program for small business, a forgivable loan from the Small Business Administration if you put the money into certain categories of spending, including payroll. Over 200,000 businesses in the state of Illinois signed up and received those loans. So who's a friend of small business? I voted for this. It was a bipartisan measure we put together. I think we ought to extend it again. And I think it's very important that we do. But in terms of taxes, let me say this. The biggest tax increase came from the man that Mr. Curran is going to vote for again to be president. And I might say, Dr. Wilson, you ended up endorsing Donald Trump in the last election. I don't know who you're voting for this time. I hope you'll tell me it's Joe Biden. But your president that you voted for, Donald Trump, came through with a tax increase primarily for the wealthiest people in America. I listened to the saying, oh, income inequality. Take a look at the Trump tax plan that added to your deficit, Mr. Curran. This Trump tax plan, which I voted against, is going to end up giving a tax break to Mr. Wilson, Dr. Wilson, and a few others, but not the people who are working for a living. So if we're going to have taxes, let them be progressive taxes. Let those like Mr. Wilson, who's very well off, pay more than those who are struggling to get by.
Aaron, go ahead.
Okay, just the National Taxpayer Union gives Senator Durbin an F, lifetime rating. It's 38 years in Congress. That's really helping small businesses, if you will. You voted, like you said, in a no-brainer with 95 other U.S. senators That's really great, Senator Durbin. You really have their back. The Chamber of Commerce, essentially every business group out there gives him horrible numbers, horrible ratings. He is not a friend of small business. The problem is he's been in government jobs for 51 years, and he just has, and he's disconnected from small business. He's disconnected from these owners. He has no idea how hard it is to make it. And he's in the biggest corporations have him in their back pocket. He takes all of their money. He's fought on behalf of them. He fought on behalf of the biggest banks, and that is not a friend of small businesses.
Okay. Marilyn, do you have a question?
I think I got to respond to that because
Okay.
he also mentioned to me, please don't look me over, all right? The situation is this here is that, yes, we are pretty much in terms of financial, all right, but we work from a sharecropper all the way where we are today. I've always given away all of my money pretty much to the community. Senator Dick Durbin have never had a job before. He's a career politician, you know. He accepts money from lobbyists and everything, all right? So he never comes into the community until it get time for running for re-election, you know. So I wanted to be clear about that because the tax break that I happen to get, we give it away. Okay, well, what have he given away? You know, that's the point right there. Why are Dick Durbin talking about President Trump when we're running against him? We're not running against President Trump. So why don't he try to talk about his record and all these people's lives he destroyed? He is a shame for him to be in this office.
Thank you, Tom. Let's start with Mr. Curran on this question. Should police departments be reimagined across the country? I'm not saying defund the police. Let's not go there. This board is not on with that. So that's not the question. Right. Do police departments need to be reimagined? And if so, what would that look like?
Thank you, Marilyn. So I took over a department that had tons and tons of problems. And I achieved accreditation on both the state and national level for the first time ever for my department. And that's an objective body coming in to look at it. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that police departments are perfect. You know, there's very little difference between a teachers union and a police union. They both have the problems. You look at, you look at Chicago and a guy that's been suspended 6 times as the head of the police union. I've never met a police officer that's been suspended that many times. So ultimately, the rank and file do a wonderful job. They work hard. We need to have their back. But by the same token, the biggest problem, Marilyn, is that when police come up through the ranks with each other, that there's a bond there. They've been backing each other up at calls. They've been backing each other up on the street. They feel as though they have each other back and they owe each other. So when they investigate their own, it's a conflict that can't happen. So you have to have an objective body outside and handle those internal investigations, number one. That's a big recommendation that I have that I think is a must. Secondly, as I mentioned to you with accreditation, you know, that's why there's such disparity in policing. Some offices don't, a lot of offices don't want to go through that because it is so rigorous. And you have, you know, these third-party entities coming in and looking at your policies and everything else, and they don't want to have to deal with any of that. So they refuse to. You know, the other thing, I just wrote an article that I expect to be published soon with regards to big city policing and why the problem. You have a mayor picks a police superintendent or a police chief, and then the mayor's got that person under their thumb and telling them to stand down or telling them what she wants done. And, you know, the mayor doesn't have any background in policing. We should take that away from the mayor, give it to a third party, a board potentially of other law enforcement, where a police superintendent gets a year-long contract, and then they can remove them for cause if they didn't do their job. We can't have, you know, a mayor gets 24 police officers in front of her home. The south side of Chicago is neglected. They're being told to stand down when they know that's not what their training tells them. So this is happening all across America. Mayors getting involved in policing, and it's not it's a recipe for disaster.
Senator Durbin?
George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake. I could go on with a long list. Videotapes and DNA have changed the American conversation about justice when it comes to policing. It's long overdue. I want to tell you, I've worked with law enforcement throughout my public career, and I'm proud of it. Some great men and women who put that badge on every morning and risk their lives for you and me. And I thank them for it. And the overwhelming majority of them are good people. They're principled, humane. They're people who believe they have a civic responsibility and they're willing to risk their lives to prove it. But within their ranks are also men and women wearing badges, carrying guns, who have no business doing it. And we saw it in 8 minutes and 46 seconds on the street of Minneapolis when George Floyd's life ebbed away with a knee on his neck. We saw it with Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times and now crippled for life because of it. We saw it with Breonna Taylor, who was killed in her own apartment with a flurry of gunfire. These are unacceptable things. When we as a nation have to step forward and say, yes, we'll stand behind the police, but we have to, as you say, reimagine their role. This gentleman in Rochester, New York, Mr. Prude, you come across a man in the middle of the night who is naked, sitting in the middle of the street in a snowstorm, and you look at it and you say, of course you call the police first, but they needed someone else there, a mental health counselor, somebody to understand what was going through his troubled mind, whether it was a drug or some pre-existing condition. So when we reimagine the police, we don't expect them to be mental health counselors. That's more than they signed up for in the most part. So yes, we ought to put more resources at their disposal to deal with domestic violence, to deal with these mental health issues, so that they can be there when we truly need them in those life and death situations which we call on. So I would just say I am co-sponsor of Justice and Policing Act with Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. I think it's a move in the right direction. There are about a dozen things that are included in it. One of them, the unions don't agree with, and I happen to believe is important. There ought to be a registry. If someone is guilty of misconduct in the police department and is dismissed, the next police department should know that fact. That's not an outrageous suggestion. And that's one of the things that we insist on and the unions push back on. I think they're wrong.
Dr. Wilson?
Look, I am obviously an African American. And I lost a 20-year-old son in violence and shot in the back of the head. Okay? Nobody knows to this whole situation than I am. It was point blank wrong that what happened and what still happened today in our community, particularly the Black and brown community. The police department, look, I support the police department. I support the community. What I got a problem with is that I don't support a lot of politicians who create problems for the community from economic development that create these problems that people can't get ahead, so then they got to do things otherwise they would not may have done. We lock up these kids, but we're not locking up enough politicians, you know? So that's where your problem lies. That if somebody like Dick Durbin could do a crime bill, send us all to jail and prison, now he's talking about all of a sudden he becomes champion of law and justice and everything. Okay, bringing all these people alive. What are you talking about? You know, I'm in them community every week out here. He's never in those communities. You know, except for now he's running for election. He's talking a different game. But okay, so arrest the politician, arrest the people who have a conflict of interest like he has. Arrest those people and politicians, white collar, making all this money without arresting somebody that got here and got some marijuana or something like that. You know, so but I support our police department. But what's wrong is going on. I do not support that. So I'm not going to back off the policemen as much as if they're wrong, they have to pay the crime. But it's two standards here. The politician closed down the Mental Health Institute. 12 of them were closed down in Chicago. Dick Durbin didn't say nothing. Now the police department got to arrest people because they got mental health issues. And the politician like Dick Durbin closed them down, you know? So that's putting extra burden on the police department, all right? So you got to look at that thing two ways. Yeah.
So Tom Frisbee, you have a...
Yes, I do. And thank you for turning to me. I would like to ask, starting with Senator Durbin, what you would do in another term about what's been happening in the United States with a sudden rejection of efforts to clean up the environment, to try and fight climate change, which is one of the biggest problems we face.
a timely question as we consider the impact of wildfires on the West Coast and the extreme weather, the record-breaking number of hurricanes that we're now noticing coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, flooding last year. You'd have to be completely ignorant to not realize that we are dealing with extreme weather conditions, the likes of which we've never seen before. I believe, Mr. Frisbee, in science. I believe in science when it comes to coronavirus. I believe in science when it comes to climate change. Donald Trump, as President of the United States, did something which was an outrage. He'll be held accountable for it in history. He removed the name of the United States from the Paris Climate Accord. We are the only nation on Earth that is not a signatory to an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Why? Because this president, as late as 2 days ago, said he doesn't believe science has proven that climate change is real. Well, I can tell you that's the kind of attitude that is disastrous, not just for the United States, but for this world. And yes, it would be one of our highest priorities. I know what Joe Biden will do. He'll be on the phone the day after, the morning of his swearing in, to call the leaders around the world to tell them America is back. We're going to be part of a global effort to deal with climate change. And we have to, for our kids and for our grandkids. And for those like Mr. Curran, who supports Donald Trump's reelection, and I still don't know, I'm still waiting for Dr. Wilson to tell us who he's voting for president. He voted for Trump last time. For them to stand in defense of the position taken by Donald Trump on climate change is completely disastrous for your kids and grandkids.
Mr. Curran?
Yeah, I mean, this is all an issue that needs addressing. I am not a climate change denier. You know, I've studied the carbon tax and the carbon cap issues. I'd like to see what happens with regards to Canada and how that develops. But, you know, we do have a responsibility to future generations, not just with economics in what the debt that we're potentially leaving them, but also the environment in the world that we're leaving them. You know, you only have to take that out of the equation. Look at China. You know, even long before this Wuhan virus broke out, you saw that.
Let's not talk about China. Let's talk about Trump's record on the environment, whether you agree with it, and what you would do about it if you don't.
Yeah. So if the portions I disagree with, I would vote against.
Which are what?
Well, I think we need more research and study, but I'm not against the drilling. I'm not against, you know, I'd like to see get off the dependence on fossil fuel, but we're not there yet. I'd like to see more incentives, you know, in terms of the tax code to move away from fossil fuels. But I think that at the same time, you know, economics has to be balanced out. You know, the Green New Deal, of which Senator Durbin seems to embrace, he's putting forward a lot of AOC's ideas, is not something that I support. I think that's, you know, that's economically disastrous. So I think President Trump, being a business guy, understands that what it takes economically. If there needs to be pushback in terms of the environment, yes, I'd be somebody that would push back on that.
Okay, can we get Mr. Wilson in on this?
Yeah, I got a couple questions that I'd like to answer for Senator Durbin about who I'm supporting this year for the presidential election. Back in 2016, his party and him, as I ran for president of the United States, they wouldn't even allow me to get on the ballot in Mississippi, nor Iowa. They wouldn't allow me to get on the stage down in South Carolina. His party, right? They wouldn't allow for me to even get the voter data. They wouldn't even allow me to get none of the things that we should get. This month in September, we got a lawsuit to make sure that that don't happen anymore. Durbin didn't allow me to do anything in his party. You know, it's Wilson versus Democratic Party. Anybody can go there and look at it and see. You know, I live 2016. I'm from Jim Crow days. I got to go over all over again from a Democratic Party. Somebody like him, and don't give me my equal right, things of that nature. It was a all white jury in Mississippi made the Democratic Party put me on the ballot one day before the election. So I want to just say that. Now, as related to who I'm going to vote for president this particular year, I don't really know. I haven't made my mind up yet. I do have my own party, so we can get a third party and try to do some things. Now, get my other question here. In terms of this energy and things of that nature, look, I support windmill, I support electric cars and things of that nature. I believe in climate control, point blank. I believe in that. And we'll do everything we can do to kind of
So,
keep that situation in place. I do believe in that. Now, some of the things that perhaps that President Trump is doing, yeah, there are some things I do not agree with. Same way I don't agree with things with Democrats. But I'm not running against Trump. I'm running against Dick Durbin.
I think I want to get back to Maryland for a question about immigration. But before I do that, I just want to act very quickly. Senator Durbin, one of the themes of your opponent's criticism, which is really interesting, is that you have never run a business. You have never been a businessman. You've been on a public payroll pretty much your entire adult career. And that, they say, is reflected, for instance, in your views on the pandemic shutdown and perhaps not appreciated as fully as others might do, the devastation it causes to small businesses. I ask that because as I sit here right now, 20 feet away from me are my neighbors who run a small hair salon, and they are just being hammered by this. And I sometimes wonder if people who are so strong in the social distancing and the efforts need to combat the coronavirus appreciate they need to balance that with the realities of small business. You haven't been there. Can you respond to that?
Tom, I did have my own law firm for 7 years in Springfield before I was elected to the U.S. House.
Oh, okay.
So I made a payroll and paid the taxes and do the things you do.
I stand corrected. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't compare myself to the business career of Dr. Wilson or even Mark Curran, but he too has a law firm, I understand. So it is a small business and we understand it, but that's different than what you just described. And I want to make sure that I honor that distinction. That beauty salon next door to you, the person running it, really has a terrible challenge to provide the services and yet keep people safe when they come into that beauty salon. And when Governor Pritzker keeps an eye on this infection rate so that it doesn't get out of control, he oftentimes has to make decisions that affect these small businesses. And I know it's got to be a heartbreak for many of them because they've invested their lives and their souls into what they're doing. That's why we came up with this paycheck protection program. That's why so many loans were given. That's why we reformed it a couple times so that it would reach down to businesses that were smaller, just to get them through and to weather this storm. But I think we need that sensitivity, but we also have to realize 60% of the businesses that are closed today are not likely to reopen. That's what we've been told this morning. I mean, and so we are facing a devastating situation in the economy because of the coronavirus. I'm going to go back to where I started. If this president had treated this virus with leadership, the kind of leadership in Canada, in Germany, and other countries, we would be in a much different situation. But he called it a hoax and he wanted to walk away from it and he ignored the public health experts, and your small businesses and all Americans are paying a heavy price.
Does the country need to have its immigration system overhauled? And if so, what would that look like? Senator Durbin, would it look like the bill you and Republicans passed in, I think, 2013, S-744, I believe that was? Can you tell us, or in 7 years, would it need to look a lot different?
Well, our immigration system is completely broken. Let's be very honest about it. I am a ranking Democrat on the immigration subcommittee. I've studied it as much, if not more, than most other issues because of its importance in our nation, and it is a mess. You can hardly explain it. So 8 of us sat down, Senator McCain and myself and others. We wrote a bill, comprehensive immigration reform. Comprehensive. Went through the committee, went through the floor, and we passed it in the Senate with 67 votes. Republicans in the House refused to take it up. I think it's the starting point of the new conversation. I introduced the DREAM Act 19 years ago. I believe in it. These kids were brought to America. They had no voice in the decision to come here. They've grown up pledging allegiance to the flag, going to our schools, and want to be part of our future. I think they've earned the right to do so. The president was wrong abolishing DACA. I believe that we ought to restore it as quickly as possible. But yes, that comprehensive bill is the starting point.
Well, look, I think that we have to look at the immigration as like this way here. I think last year, if my numbers are correct, we spent over $100 billion on immigrants. And people in these United States is hungry, you know. I think we need to have laws in place that people can come to the state, and they need to be checks and balance. When I go to China or any other country, foreign country, I have to fill out and get visa, you know, before I can go in those countries. You know, we need to make sure that we be protected by anybody that comes in the country like other people do. But okay, so you can come in the United States and take and have a baby, and then you can go back to China or some other country, but still you're a citizen of the United States. Well, you can't do that in China or some other country, you know. We have to make sure that those things are right and protect our citizens, you know. So those things there we got to look at, and you got Senator Durbin there. Look, how you spend roughly $100 billion on immigrant, and you can't spend money right here, economic development contract, and Black and Brown community less than 1% in the state of Illinois, and people businesses closed up here. You know, you can't get paid, man. These businesses got to open up. So I'm just leading from there to there. But see, we have to look at immigration. We have to make sure that we take care of its citizens first. You know?
But don't you think you don't see, Dr. Wilson, where immigrants contribute to this country? They contribute economically. They contribute to their communities in many ways. Do you not take that into account, sir?
Oh, no, I'm not saying at all. I said truly. But if I'm at home, I take care of my wife before I go out and take care of anybody else. You know? So what I'm actually saying is that, look, if you spend $100 billion when people here ain't got a job, it's lunatic, you know?
Okay, I don't think you're taking into account their contributions. Mr. Curran, let's turn to you.
Well, wait a minute, ma'am. Don't just do that. Let me finish. So look, I'm on this Zoom call, so you just cannot disrespect me that way, okay? You know, so I haven't mentioned nothing like that, but that is point blank wrong. Okay, so let me finish the conversation, but don't just turn it off that way.
Okay, I think you're point blank wrong, and it's important to convey that.
I think you got a problem. I just think you got a problem.
Mr. Wills, you want to finish your point? Because we're running out of.
Okay, my point is that we need to take care of citizens in the United States, in the state of Illinois first, before we look out and do something else. I'm not knocking immigrant, period. But we're overlooking our citizens in the state of Illinois. You got to take care of people in the state of Illinois first, and then you can try to do things for other people and things of that nature too. But when people starve and ain't got jobs, we got to look at that as well. Take that in consideration. That's what I was about to say.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. And Mr. Curran, what's your view?
Former Vice President Biden flew me to Washington, D.C. to help him work on the immigration bill. I've been all over the country on it. The 2013 bill was not perfect, but yes, I would have liked to have seen that pass because there was a lot in there with regards to border security. I think part of the problem, though, is that Dick Durbin, whose votes it's sometimes 100% with his party, at a minimum, he's well over 95% historically, that he's such a far left partisan that he doesn't have a real strong talent with regards to selling things to the larger bodies. And I do. I mean, as a Republican, having been in favor of immigration reform, I took a lot of hits. All you have to do is Google me and you'll see it. But I think that we need to look at countries like India, where there's a lot of talent, and increase the number of visas and not limit the number of people when you have such great talent in mathematics and computers and what have you, to be able to come to this country. Ultimately, it's about growing the American economy. We're in a global marketplace, and I think that's paramount. But we also need border security. There was a DACA bill that President Trump was willing to sign, but Senator Durbin voted against it because it had border security and funding for the wall, which he's trashed time and time again. Ultimately, I think that just goes to show the partisan nature of Senator Durbin, that he's always calculating, how is this going to affect politically? And as Dr. Wilson has pointed out, we're not running, we're not running for president, Senator Durbin. This is for U.S. Senate. You've been there for 38 years. You have kicked the can down the road. And that's why Social Security and Medicare are bankrupt, because of you and your failure to stand up and do the right thing. President Trump is not on the ballot in the United States Senate race.
Marilyn, any follow-up on that question? Because otherwise I'll.
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm about trying to bring people together. I'm not running against the president. I'm running against Dick Durbin. I'm tired of this back and forth trying to say about somebody is this and that, the personality. When people need to get things done to help the citizens of the state of Illinois, you know, we need to get in there and talk on both sides. If Joe Biden win presidency or Donald Trump win presidency, it'll be about mine trying to work with either one of them to take and try to make sure that put the people first over politics. Because you're all Democrat, you shouldn't go with a party and put it over the citizen. You know, everything that Dick Durbin does, he goes with the party. He gets approval. He's second in charge. I think that's wrong. I think also as he's been in office for 37 years, you got to ask yourself, are you better off today than what you were 37 years ago with, or 38 years ago with Dick Durbin? The community is still the same. Now he wants to come back into the community and ask for people to vote. And so that's wrong. I personally don't want to see Senator Durbin back into particular the black and brown community, because the fact that he's never back in taking very much for election, it's disrespectful, you know. But outside of that, I'm running for the citizen. I don't want no money. I give it away. I don't want no paycheck. You get paycheck, I'll give it away. There's no conflict of interest. You got me for state of Illinois free. I understand business. My background shows and do things for other people, not for self. So I think that the state of Illinois, when they get ready to vote, you got me free. I don't want a paycheck. And lastly, is that I have a problem with Dick Durbin serving U.S. Senate and being a lobbyist at the same time. It's wrong.
Okay. I just want to thank the Sun-Times. I mean, the fact that you all had all three of us here is commendable. So for those that don't know me as well, you know, I was the longtime sheriff of Lake County, Illinois, and Lake County is arguably the second bluest county in Illinois. President Trump lost Lake County by 21 points. I was the highest Republican vote getter consistently up in Lake County, Illinois. And Lake County is a microcosm of the United States, a microcosm of Illinois. It has a lot of Latinos, almost 21%. It has a lot of blacks, a lot of different groups. And I worked well with all those groups. You may remember I was the sheriff that spent a week in his own jail. And the reason why I did that was I saw the problem of especially Black Americans that were going to jail. They were being stigmatized for the rest of their lives with this scarlet letter, ex-con, felon. I would do whatever I could to help Black Americans. Similarly, Latinos, I had a great relationship in the Latino communities. I've worked across the lines with all types of different groups. Papers that have covered me, I've run for office 5 times. And every single time I've run for office, every single newspaper that covered the race endorsed me. They've looked into my background. They've looked into what I did. What I said I was going to do, I in fact did. I have no desire to be a career politician. This is a painful job if you do it right. As sheriff 3 times, I can't tell you what a lonely walk that was because of the people that you upset. Similarly, as a U.S. Senator, I expect that I will upset Republicans as much as I will Democrats. Anybody that follows me will see that I take a lot of shots from Republicans all the time because I'm truly an independent voice. I will fight for Illinois. I will fight for the small businesses. I will fight for the farmers and the agricultural community. And after 38 years of this guy, where he has been obsessed with one thing, and that's just getting reelected, number one. But he's taken that election for granted, and really all he cares about is maintaining that number 2 role in the United States Senate, where he listens to all the far left Democrats in the Senate and puts forth an agenda that is not good for America or Illinois. I'd love to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you.